September 19, 1944, 15:45 hours, near Arracourt, France. Oberleutnant Hans Weber peered through his Panther tank's periscope, scanning the rolling farmland ahead. His crew had been hunting American armor for 3 hours. The autumn sun hung low, casting long shadows across the harvested wheat fields. Suddenly, his gunner shouted, "Movement at 800 meters." Weber's heart raced as he identified the target, an American tank destroyer, low-slung and fast. He gave the order to fire. The 75mm gun roared, but before the smoke cleared, the American vehicle had vanished. It had accelerated to highway speeds and disappeared behind a tree line in less than 3 minutes. Weber would never see it again. But he'd just encountered the M18 Hellcat, the fastest armored fighting vehicle of World War II. Why this story matters. The M18 Hellcat represented a radical departure from conventional armored warfare doctrine. While German engineers built heavier, more powerful tanks with thicker armor, American designers created something different, a tank destroyer that could outrun anything on the battlefield. This wasn't just about speed for speed's sake. The Hellcat embodied a tactical philosophy that prioritized mobility, firepower, and survivability through movement, rather than static protection. In the desperate fighting across France and Germany in 1944-45, these characteristics would prove devastatingly effective. German tank crews, accustomed to fighting heavily armored opponents who stood and slugged it out, found themselves facing an enemy that appeared, fired, and vanished before they could respond. The psychological impact was enormous. The 3-minute engagement window, the time German crews typically had to acquire, aim at, and fire upon a Hellcat before it disappeared, became a recurring nightmare for Panzer forces in the European theater. The crisis that created the Hellcat. America entered World War II with a critical weakness in armored warfare. The country's existing tank destroyers were too slow, too heavy, and built on outdated chassis. The M10 Wolverine, introduced in 1942, mounted an excellent 3-inch gun but could only manage 30 miles per hour on roads. When facing German tanks and assault guns, American commanders discovered that slow tank destroyers arrived at critical points too late or couldn't reposition quickly enough to avoid counterattack. In North Africa and Italy during 1942-43, this limitation cost lives and battles. The tank destroyer command needed something revolutionary. In January 1943, the Ordnance Department issued specifications for a new tank destroyer that seemed almost impossible to build. They wanted a vehicle that could reach 50 miles per hour, mount a 76mm gun capable of defeating German armor at combat ranges, weigh less than 20 tons for air transportability, and cost less to produce than existing designs. Most importantly, it needed to enter production immediately. The invasion of Europe was coming, and American forces needed every advantage they could get. Buick Motor Division's engineering team, led by Harlow H. Curtis and Chief Engineer J. H. Slauson, accepted the challenge. They started with a radical premise: abandon the idea of protection through armor. Instead, they would create a vehicle so fast and maneuverable that it wouldn't need heavy armor. The crew's survivability would depend on speed, not steel. This went against every instinct of traditional tank design. But Curtis understood something crucial. In mobile warfare, the ability to choose when and where to fight mattered more than the ability to absorb punishment. The design team built the prototype on an entirely new chassis, not a modified tank hull like most American tank destroyers. They used a torsion bar suspension system copied from German designs, which provided superior mobility over rough terrain. The engine was a Continental R975, a radial aircraft engine that produced 400 horsepower, enormous power for a vehicle that would weigh only 17.7 tons. The power-to-weight ratio was extraordinary, nearly 23 horsepower per ton, compared to 13 horsepower per ton for a Sherman tank and only 9 horsepower per ton for a Tiger WWII. The hull was an open-top design with minimal armor, only 12.7mm on most surfaces, with a maximum of 25.4mm on the gun shield. This seemed suicidal to conventional thinkers, but it made the Hellcat light enough to achieve its remarkable speed. The turret, also open-topped, could traverse 360 degrees in just 20 seconds, much faster than German tanks. This meant Hellcat crews could engage targets in any direction almost instantly, another crucial advantage in the fluid, fast-moving battles across France and Germany. By October 1943, the prototype exceeded all expectations. During trials at Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, it reached 55 miles per hour on roads, a speed that seemed impossible for an armored fighting vehicle. Off-road performance was equally impressive. 26 miles per hour across rough terrain, nearly double what most tanks could manage. The Army immediately ordered it into production. Buick's factory in Flint, Michigan, began producing M18s in January 1944. By April, the first units were shipping to Europe. The timing was perfect. Operation Overlord, the invasion of Normandy, was scheduled for June 1944. American commanders knew they'd face formidable German armor, Panthers, Tigers, and the new Panther AUSF G tanks, all with superior guns and armor to American Shermans. The Hellcat offered a counter, a vehicle that could not win a slugging match but did not need to. It would hit and run, using superior speed to dictate the terms of engagement. German tankers, used to fighting opponents who stayed put, were about to face something entirely new. The doctrine was simple but revolutionary. Hellcat units would operate as mobile reserves, rushing to threatened sectors, engaging enemy armor from advantageous positions, then withdrawing before the enemy could respond effectively. The crews called it shoot and scoot, and it would prove devastatingly effective in the campaigns ahead. The stage was set for one of World War II's most remarkable armored vehicles to prove itself in combat. The M18 Hellcat tank emerged from Buick Motor Division factories as the culmination of aggressive American engineering that prioritized battlefield mobility over traditional protection concepts. The complete vehicle weighed exactly 17,700 pounds in combat configuration, with a full crew of 5 men and complete ammunition load aboard. This weight represented less than half the mass of a German Panther tank, which tipped the scales at 45 tons when ready for battle. The Continental R975C1 radial engine generated 400 gross horsepower at 2,400 revolutions per minute and provided exceptional power for such a light vehicle. This power plant was an air-cooled 9-cylinder radial engine originally designed for aircraft use and adapted for armored vehicle applications during the war years. The transmission system featured 3 forward gears and 1 reverse gear with a final drive ratio optimized for maximum road speed rather than climbing ability. American engineers calculated that the power-to-weight ratio of 22.6 horsepower per ton would give the Hellcat unmatched acceleration and top speed on European roads. The torsion bar suspension system used individual suspension arms for each of the 6 road wheels on each side of the vehicle hull design. This suspension design came directly from German tank technology and provided superior cross-country performance compared to the older vertical volute spring system used on Sherman tanks. The track system measured 13 inches in width and used rubber block tracks that reduced ground pressure while maintaining high-speed capability on paved surfaces. Maximum road speed reached 55 miles per hour on level paved highways, making the Hellcat faster than most wheeled armored cars of the same period. Off-road speed averaged 26 miles per hour across typical European farmland terrain with moderate obstacles and rolling ground conditions present throughout the combat zone. The operational range extended to 105 miles on internal fuel tanks, holding 165 gallons of gasoline for extended combat operations, without refueling requirements stopping the advance. The main armament consisted of the 76mm M1A1 gun, mounted in a fully rotating open-topped turret with manual traverse and elevation controls operated by the gunner. This weapon fired armor-piercing rounds at a muzzle velocity of 2,600 feet per second, and could penetrate 80 mm of armor plate at 1,000 yards under optimal impact angles. The gun could elevate to plus 19 degrees and depress to minus 10 degrees, giving crews excellent ability to engage targets from hull-down positions on varied terrain. Standard ammunition load consisted of 45 rounds of 76mm ammunition, including armor-piercing capped ballistic cap rounds and high-explosive shells for different target types encountered during operations. The turret could complete a full 360-degree rotation in just 20 seconds using manual traverse, compared to 60 seconds for most German tank turrets of similar size. Secondary armament included a single Browning M2, 50 caliber heavy machine gun mounted on a ring mount at the rear of the turret for air defense and anti-personnel work. The armor protection measured only 12.7 mm on the hull sides and rear, with a maximum thickness of 25.4 mm on the gun shield, protecting the gunner from small arms fire. This minimal armor could not stop armor-piercing rounds from German tank guns or even heavy machine gun fire at close ranges under direct fire conditions. American doctrine accepted this vulnerability because designers believed that speed and mobility would keep Hellcats out of situations where enemy return fire could be accurately directed at them. The crew compartment remained open to the sky because designers eliminated the turret roof to save weight and allow faster crew escape if the vehicle caught fire. 5 men operated each Hellcat, including a commander who directed tactical operations, a gunner who aimed and fired the main weapon, and a loader who handled ammunition from the racks. The driver sat in the front left hull position and controlled vehicle movement, while the assistant driver operated the radio and served as hull machine gunner when needed. Production began at the Buick factory in Flint, Michigan during January 1944 and continued until October 1944, when the Army decided that sufficient numbers had been manufactured for combat requirements. American industry produced exactly 2,507 M18 tank destroyers during this 10-month production run, at a unit cost of approximately $55,000 per vehicle, including all equipment and armament. This cost represented significant savings compared to the M10 Wolverine, which cost $66,000, and the M36 Jackson, which eventually cost $76,000 per unit to manufacture. The first M18 units arrived in Europe during July 1944, approximately 1 month after D-Day landings had established Allied forces on the French coast near Normandy. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion became the first American unit to receive M18 Hellcats in the European theater, and began combat operations during late July 1944 near Saint-Lô, France. Crews immediately appreciated the remarkable speed that allowed them to reposition between firing locations faster than any other armored vehicle they had previously operated during training or combat. German tankers encountered the Hellcat for the first time during August 1944 battles in the Normandy breakout, when American forces began their sweep across France toward the German border. The combination of speed, firepower, and tactical mobility created a weapon system that operated according to fundamentally different principles than traditional tank destroyer doctrine had previously accepted as standard practice. American tank destroyer units discovered they could arrive at threatened locations before German armor broke through defensive lines, and could withdraw before enemy forces organized coordinated counterattacks against their positions. Arracourt and the Panzer Nightmare. The Battle of Arracourt in September 1944 demonstrated exactly why German tank crews feared the M18 Hellcat and struggled to counter its revolutionary combination of speed and firepower. General George Patton's Third Army had been advancing rapidly across France during late summer 1944, when fuel shortages forced a temporary halt near the town of Arracourt in Lorraine. German forces saw this pause as an opportunity to launch a major counteroffensive using the 5th Panzer Army, with approximately 262 tanks, including 86 Panther tanks and numerous Panzer IV models. The German plan called for a concentrated armored thrust that would cut through American lines and disrupt the entire Allied advance toward the German border before winter weather arrived. American forces defending the Arracourt sector included the 4th Armored Division supported by the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, equipped with 36 M18 Hellcat tank destroyers, ready for combat operations. September 19, 1944, marked the beginning of the German offensive, when Panzer columns advanced through early morning fog, expecting to overwhelm thinly spread American defensive positions around the town. Lieutenant Edwin Leiper commanded a platoon of 4 M18 Hellcats positioned near the village of Rechicourt, when German tanks appeared through the mist at approximately 07:30 hours that morning. Leiper's crews immediately identified at least 15 German tanks advancing in column formation along the main road, with Panther tanks leading the formation and Panzer IVs following close behind. The Hellcat crews waited until the German column reached a range of 800 yards before opening fire from concealed positions among farm buildings along the roadside, giving them tactical surprise. The lead Panther exploded when a 76mm armor-piercing round penetrated its side armor, where protection measured only 40mm compared to 80mm on the frontal glacis plate armor. Leiper's gunner Corporal William Messimer fired 3 rounds in rapid succession, destroying 2 more Panthers before German crews could identify the American firing positions and return accurate fire. The remaining German tanks immediately stopped their advance and attempted to locate the American tank destroyers that had just destroyed 3 vehicles in less than 2 minutes of combat. Before German gunners could acquire targets, the 4 Hellcats accelerated to maximum speed and withdrew to secondary firing positions 1,200 yards away, through roads between the farm complexes in the area. The entire withdrawal movement took less than 3 minutes from the moment the last shot was fired, until all 4 Hellcats reached their new positions completely out of German sight. German tank commanders reported frustration at fighting an enemy that refused to remain stationary long enough for accurate return fire to be directed at the American firing positions they briefly occupied. Oberst Heinrich Luttwitz, commanding officer of the German 111th Panzer Brigade, later stated that American tank destroyers appeared and disappeared like ghosts, making coordinated counterattacks nearly impossible to organize effectively. The pattern repeated throughout the day as Hellcat platoons engaged German armor from one position, then relocated before Panzer crews could organize effective responses to the ambush attacks they suffered. By nightfall on September 19th, the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion had destroyed 15 German tanks without losing a single M18 Hellcat to enemy fire during the entire day of combat operations. The battle continued for 6 more days as German forces made repeated attempts to break through American lines using concentrated armor attacks supported by infantry and artillery bombardments preparing the advances. Lieutenant Edward Forrest commanded another Hellcat platoon on September 22nd when his unit encountered a German column of 9 Panther tanks advancing through open farmland near the village of Bures. Forrest positioned his 4 Hellcats in a line parallel to the German route of advance and waited until the Panthers came within 600 yards before ordering his platoons to open fire. The tactical situation allowed Hellcat gunners to engage the side armor of German tanks where penetration was virtually guaranteed compared to the heavily armored frontal sections of Panther tank designs. Forrest's platoon destroyed 5 Panthers in the opening volley before German crews could react and return fire at the American positions, now clearly visible across the open fields between the forces. The 4 M18s then demonstrated their remarkable acceleration by reaching 35 miles per hour within seconds and withdrawing behind a tree line before German guns could be aimed and fired accurately. German tank commanders faced an impossible tactical problem because their Panthers could only reach maximum speeds of 28 miles per hour on roads and barely 15 miles per hour across muddy fields. This speed disadvantage meant that German tanks could not pursue withdrawing Hellcats and could not close the range to where their superior armor and gun penetration would provide tactical advantages in combat. Staff Sergeant William McDowell commanded a single Hellcat on September 25th when he encountered 4 Panther tanks at the village of Moncourt during the final phase of the Arracourt battle sequence. McDowell's crew waited in ambush position as the German tanks approached and opened fire at 700 yards, destroying the lead Panther with a single shot through the turret ring, where armor protection was minimal. The remaining 3 Panthers immediately halted and began searching for the American firing position. But McDowell's driver accelerated the Hellcat to maximum speed within 15 seconds of firing the initial shot. German return fire struck the ground where the Hellcat had been positioned, but the vehicle was already 400 yards away and moving at 45 miles per hour down a farm road toward safety. McDowell repositioned and engaged the same German tank column from a completely different direction 20 minutes later, destroying another Panther, before withdrawing again at high speed through the countryside terrain features. The psychological impact on German tank crews became apparent in after-action reports and prisoner interrogations conducted by American intelligence officers following the battle around Arracourt in late September 1944. German tankers reported feeling helpless against an enemy that could strike from any direction without warning and disappear before effective counterfire could be organized by commanders or executed by gunners. Panther tank crews particularly resented the tactical situation because their vehicles possessed superior armor protection and gun performance, but could not bring these advantages to bear against such mobile opponents operating freely. The final statistics from the Battle of Arracourt demonstrated the effectiveness of Hellcat tactics when properly employed by trained crews operating under competent tactical leadership, directing their movements and fire. American tank destroyer units destroyed 201 German armored vehicles during the 7-day battle, while losing only 25 M18 Hellcats to all causes, including mechanical breakdowns and mine strikes as well as enemy fire. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion alone claimed 39 confirmed German tank kills during the Arracourt fighting, with only 7 M18s lost to enemy action throughout the entire engagement period from start to finish. German forces abandoned their counteroffensive on September 29th and withdrew eastward toward the German border, having failed to achieve any of their strategic objectives in the Lorraine region of France. The M18 Hellcat fundamentally changed how American forces approached armored warfare and influenced tank destroyer doctrine for the remainder of World War II and beyond into post-war military thinking. American factories produced exactly 2,507 M18 tank destroyers between January and October 1944, making it one of the most rapidly manufactured specialized armored vehicles of the entire war period. The United States Army formed 15 tank destroyer battalions equipped with M18 Hellcats and deployed them to the European theater between July 1944 and the end of hostilities in May 1945. These battalions participated in every major campaign from the Normandy breakout through the Battle of the Bulge and the final push into Germany during the spring offensive of 1945 across the Rhine River. Combat records from these units showed that M18-equipped battalions achieved kill-to-loss ratios averaging 4.1 to 1 against German armor throughout the European campaign from mid-1944 through war's end. This performance exceeded the ratios achieved by M10 Wolverine units, which averaged 2.8 to 1, and M36 Jackson units, which achieved approximately 3.5 to 1 against similar German opposition during comparable time periods. The exceptional mobility of the Hellcat proved particularly valuable during the Battle of the Bulge in December 1944, when German forces launched their final major offensive through the Ardennes forest region. American commanders used M18 battalions as mobile reserves that could rapidly deploy to threatened sectors and provide immediate anti-tank support before German armor could exploit breakthrough opportunities created by initial attacks. The 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion rushed to Bastogne during the German encirclement and provided critical anti-tank defense that helped American forces hold the town until relief forces arrived weeks later. German intelligence reports from late 1944 specifically warned Panzer commanders about the M18 and recommended avoiding engagement whenever possible, because the vehicle's speed made it nearly impossible to destroy reliably. These reports noted that German tank crews typically had between 2 and 4 minutes to acquire aim and fire at M18 positions before the American vehicles relocated beyond effective engagement range. The 3-minute engagement window became a standard assumption in German tactical planning when operating in areas where M18 units were known to be present and active against armor formations. Post-war analysis by American military historians determined that M18 Hellcats destroyed approximately 526 German armored vehicles during combat operations in Europe between July 1944 and May 1945, according to verified unit records. This figure included confirmed kills of 87 Panther tanks, 23 Tiger WW2 heavy tanks, and numerous Panzer IV tanks, along with assault guns and other armored fighting vehicles encountered during operations. The loss rate for M18 units remained remarkably low, with only 216 Hellcats destroyed or damaged beyond repair during the entire European campaign from all causes, including enemy action and mechanical failures. American crews consistently praised the Hellcat for its reliability and ease of maintenance, compared to other armored vehicles they had operated during training and previous combat assignments in different theaters. The radial engine proved exceptionally dependable and could operate for extended periods without major maintenance interventions that would remove vehicles from frontline service for extended repair work at depot facilities. The open-topped design that initially concerned crews actually proved advantageous because it allowed rapid escape if the vehicle was hit and caught fire from fuel or ammunition ignition during combat engagements. Crew survival rates in knocked-out M18s exceeded 80% compared to approximately 50% in fully enclosed tank destroyers, where escape hatches could jam from battle damage or become blocked by terrain. The psychological impact of the Hellcat extended beyond its actual combat performance because German forces often overestimated American tank destroyer capabilities based on the M18's remarkable speed and tactical flexibility in engagements. German tank commanders frequently reported encountering larger numbers of M18s than were actually present because the same vehicles appeared at multiple locations during single engagements after rapid repositioning between firing positions. This force multiplication effect meant that a single Hellcat platoon of 4 vehicles could create the impression of company strength forces by engaging from multiple positions within short time periods. After World War II ended in 1945, the United States Army retained M18 Hellcats in service and deployed them during the Korean War from 1950 through 1953 against North Korean and Chinese armor. The vehicle proved effective against Soviet-built T-34-85 tanks used by communist forces, and demonstrated that the basic design remained viable 6 years after production had ended in 1944. Several foreign nations purchased surplus M18 Hellcats after World War II, including Venezuela, Yugoslavia, and Pakistan, which operated them well into the 1970s before finally retiring the last examples from active service. The Yugoslav army used M18s during border conflicts in the 1960s, and reported that the vehicles remained mechanically reliable and tactically effective more than 20 years after their original manufacture in Michigan. Modern military analysts recognize the M18 Hellcat as a successful example of designing weapons systems around specific tactical concepts, rather than attempting to create universal platforms capable of performing all missions equally. The decision to sacrifice armor protection for mobility represented a calculated risk that proved correct under the actual combat conditions encountered in Western Europe during 1944 and 1945, fighting across France and Germany. Contemporary tank destroyer doctrine evolved from Hellcat experience and influenced post-war development of rapid response anti-tank systems, including wheeled tank destroyers and helicopter-mounted anti-tank guided missiles used by modern forces. The fundamental concept of using speed and mobility as primary defensive characteristics, rather than relying on armor protection, continues to influence military vehicle design in the 21st century for reconnaissance and rapid response units. Several M18 Hellcats survive in museums today, including examples at the United States Army Ordnance Museum in Maryland and the National Armor and Cavalry Museum in Georgia, preserving the history of this remarkable vehicle. One fully operational M18 remains in private hands and appears at military vehicle demonstrations, where it continues to impress observers with its acceleration and top speed capabilities nearly 80 years after original production. The legacy of the Hellcat demonstrates that unconventional solutions to military problems can succeed when designers correctly understand the tactical environment and create weapon systems specifically optimized for those particular conditions, rather than traditional approaches. German tank crews who faced M18 Hellcats in combat never forgot the experience of fighting an opponent that appeared without warning, struck with devastating accuracy, and vanished before effective return fire could destroy it. The 3-minute engagement window that defined Hellcat tactics represented a revolution in armored warfare that changed how military forces thought about mobility, firepower, and survivability in combat vehicle design for generations to come. Final statistics and summary. M18 Hellcat specifications. Weight 17,700 pounds, combat loaded. Engine, Continental R975C1 radial. 400 horsepower. Maximum speed, 55 miles per hour on roads. Off-road speed, 26 miles per hour cross-country. Range, 105 miles on internal fuel. Main armament, 76 mm M1A1 gun with 45 rounds. Armor, 12.7 mm to 25.4 mm maximum thickness. Crew, 5 men. Production total, 2507 units manufactured. Combat record. Units equipped, 15 tank destroyer battalions. German vehicles destroyed, 526 confirmed kills. M18 losses, 216 total all causes. Kill-to-loss ratio, 4.1 to 1 average. Crew survival rate, 80% when vehicle knocked out. Service period, July 1944 through May 1945. Europe, continued service. Korean War, 1950 through 1953. The M18 Hellcat remains the fastest-tracked armored fighting vehicle ever deployed in combat operations, and proved that speed could defeat armor when combined with proper tactics and well-trained crews operating under effective leadership, understanding the vehicle's capabilities and limitations.